In this episode, we are continuing on our journey of getting the TodoList widget finished. Namely, let's focus on the TodoTile. Hello, welcome to Todo, where you are getting prepared for real app development so that you will get freelance clients or a job and be confident about the apps you build. So subscribe and hit the bell to join us on our quest for becoming in-demand Flutter developers. So as I've said, in this part we are going to focus on getting this TodoTile finished, because currently we have only a checkbox in there, but by the end of this part it's going to look just like in the finished app, except for the reorderability, because that will come in the next part. But we basically want to add the editable text field here, and also it's gonna need to be swipeable to the left, which will allow us to delete this to do. But first, before we do any of that, we need to take a look at the errors that have appeared inside of our project. And all of them have appeared because we are now, or at least I am now, on the newest Flutter version 1.22.0. And this has caused a bunch of issues with certain plugins or with certain packages we are using. So if we go to the error inside of app-widget.dart, we can see that there is a problem with an extended navigator and all of that. Now, before trying to fix it in any other way, it's probably going to be good to also update the autoroute package. So let's go to pubspec YAML and let's open up the show dependency versions. And we're going to find autoroutes updated to 069. And also we're going to update the generator for autoroute. Cool. Now, when we try to save this, we are going to get an error because freezed and autoroute now depend on different analyzer versions. So thankfully, all we need to do here is to also update freezed. And as always, this pubspec YAML code and all the other code is available from the link in the video description. So let's update the freezed dev dependency and also freezed regular dependency, the freezed annotation, if I can find it. Somewhere should be here. Okay, to version 0.12.0. Let's update that. And while we are at it, inside of the pubspec YAML, let's also add the package, which is going to allow us to swipe to the left and see this nice delete icon button and press it. So this package is called Flutter Slidable. So let me just use the add update dependencies, slidable, Flutter Slidable. All right, where was it added? I guess, yeah, somewhere here. It's probably now alphabetically sorted, which is kind of cool to see. So now that we have Flutter Slidable here, let's again save pubspec YAML. And because we have just updated the autoroute package and also freezed while doing that, which are both code generation packages, we should probably rerun our favorite build runner command. So let me just place it in here. We are actually not going to watch this time because we can really just do a one-off build. So let's run flutter pub run build runner build, delete conflicting outputs, and let's see what happens. This should really just run, and we should be good to go to continue with doing our things which we want to actually focus on in this part. Awesome, so it did work. I'm kind of actually surprised because usually I get some sort of an issue with the build runner. I did get it while preparing my preparation project for recording this tutorial, because I have just updated to Flutter 1.22.0 after all. So things got broken. So if you get issues after updating your Flutter version and it doesn't just work magically on the first try like this with the build runner, what you need to do is first run Flutter clean, run it. After it runs Flutter clean, then you should run Flutter pub upgrade. So again, run it. And then usually all of the issues with build runner not wanting to go through actions is basically just going to be stuck on like 11 out of 27 actions, and it's just going to be stuck there. It's not going to progress any further. If that happens, just run these two commands and you should be fine. We didn't get this, but I just wanted to mention this because you are probably going to get these issues if you are following along and also updating your Flutter versions. So Flutter clean and Flutter pub upgrade are your saviors here. Now we can continue with fixing the navigator bit of code. So what we need to do is change the thing which we're using here from the default constructor to the named builder constructor. And now another issue here is that we are using something we have called router. Where is this coming from? If you don't remember, after all that time that this series has been going on, well, our router has been defined here inside of our router.dart file, and the router without the $sign in front of it is inside of the generated file here, router. Now, why are we getting this squiggly line over here? Well, that's because, as you can see, router is now coming from the widgets package and also from our own file. This again has happened because of the concept of a router, which comes with Navigator 2.0, which is now available in Flutter 1.22.0. So because of this new Flutter version, we need to either always specify a prefix for our own router, or we need to rename our router class to something different, for example, app router, right? Inside of our definition file right over here, we would say app router. Because I don't want to rerun code generation, and really we are using this router just once over here, it's kind of okay to just have a named import, so s app router, and now use this named import here, app router.router, and we are now good to go. As you can see, we don't have any errors, we just have some minor info messages which usually aren't even our fault because they are all inside of the freezed generated files. So now we are good to go, and we can actually run the app because it doesn't have any errors anymore. So let's do that. And once it runs, we are going to continue inside of the file called TodoList widget.dart, and we are going to continue building our list style to completion. Here we go. So let's hop right into the first note. As you can see, it should hold 2 to-dos, learn all the widgets, and hey. But of course now we can see only the checkboxes, but we cannot see the text. So let's change that by adding certain things to the list style. So we will want to have an editable text field inside of the title position of the list style. So let's do just that. We are going to have text form field, and let's just style it at first. So we will want to have a decoration here, which is going to be an input decoration, and this input decoration will hold a hint text, which is going to be shown before user inputs any sort of a value of his own. So it will be to do, right? Something like this. Then we don't want this to have an input border actually. So we're going to say border input border dot none, which is going to hide the input border. We are doing this because we actually want to have a border around the whole list tile, around the whole to-do tile, and not just around the text. That's why we are hiding it from the text exclusively. All right, now let's continue with specifying the max length to be some number. And since this is representing a to-do name, we have a to-do name value object after all, and it holds max length because to-do name is a validated value object. So we can get the max length constant from the to-do name value object. Cool. What this has done is that now there is a counter for the number of characters, which is going to be telling the user if he's over the allowed number of characters. As you can see here, 0 out of 30. 30, I start typing and the counter goes up. Now you may want to have it in there, but for the sake of this app, I actually would like to get rid of this counter because it just looks silly in my opinion for this kind of a situation. So what we can do is inside of input decoration, what we are going to do is counter text and just set it to an empty string like this. And from the API of Flutter of the text form field, what's going to happen is that it's going to be hidden when you set it to be an empty string. So just like that, we have hidden the counter text. And now we actually have finished everything there is when it comes to styling this text form field. So now let's focus on how we can operate with the values which are coming from the text form field and how we can save them inside of our node form block. Or possibly not save them, but rather process them is the more proper word for it. Before anything else, we need to utilize a text editing controller for this text form field. If for anything else, we just need to use it so that we can assign an initial value which is going to be held inside of this text form field. Because as you know, for example, this node holds two to-dos which are called learn all the widgets and hey. And when we try to edit this node, the user should obviously see those values already filled in over here. Currently, the user just doesn't see anything. It's a blank to do, which is not cool if you are editing an already present node. So because of that, we need to use a text editing controller with a value already filled inside of it. So how are we going to get this text editing controller? Well, we are inside of a hook widget, which you should already be familiar with if you are this far in this tutorial series. And with hook widgets, we can just very simply obtain a text editing controller. Unlike if we were using a stateful widget, we would need to go through the whole procedure. But here we can just try to obtain a text editing controller by calling use text editing controller. And we are also going to provide a text, which is going to be the default text, which is pre-filled. It's going to be from the to-do gotten for the particular index inside of the list view. So to-do right here, and the name of the to-do item primitive, right? And now we are going to assign this text editing controller to a final variable called text editing controller. And now we can assign it to our text form field. So controller is our text editing controller. Let's save that And immediately we can see that the values which are pre-filled have already popped into view so the user can see them inside of the to-do tile. Now let's handle how the values are going to be passed into our node form block when the text form field is updated. So we want to utilize the onChanged callback, which is going to pass us a value which has been changed. And the code inside of onChanged will be basically identical to the checkboxes onChanged handler. So we can actually copy it, I would say, and paste it here. And obviously, the only thing which is going to change inside of this code is that we are not going to update the done boolean of our primitive, but instead we are going to update the name. So name is equal to value, which is a simple string in this case. So again, what we are doing, I have explained this in depth in the previous episode, but just to recap, we are basically grabbing the whole KT list of to-do item primitives, which we are editing, mapping over it, because we want to find one particular to-do item primitive, which is used for this particular TodoTile widget, right? After we find that one particular to-do item primitive, then we are just going to immutably edit it. So we are going to use copy with, because we are using freeze, which is immutable, which is nice, but also adds a bit of boilerplate, as you can see. And if the to-do which we are mapping over is not the particular one for this to-do tile, well, we are just going to return it unchanged, right? And then, of course, we grab hold of the node form block and say to-dos have changed and pass in the to-dos which have just changed. All right, and now, just like we are used to from all of the other text form fields inside of this app, we are then going to also need to have a validator in here. And in the spirit of validators, when you are doing the domain-driven design with value objects approach, it's going to look like this. We're going to get the validated string or null in case of no failure from our node form block. So we want to return context dot block, grab the node form block, and now we want to get the state from the block, the most fresh state. We want to grab hold of the nodes, then the nodes to do's, then the value, which is either a valid KT list or a value failure here. And then, depending on whether there is a value or not for the whole to-do list, we're going to fold this first either. Now, if there is a failure for the whole list, which means that there are more than 3 items inside of the whole list, well, in that case, we are just not going to do anything. We are not going to show any errors inside of the text fields, because it just doesn't make sense, because the whole list has a failure. So therefore, the individual texts are not even going to be shown if there are more than 3 items, if such a thing happens. So let me just paste a comment in here saying that a failure stemming from the to-do list length should not be displayed by the individual text form fields, which is what I have just explained. But in the case that the whole list is correct without a failure, we actually want to possibly show an error message inside of the text form field. So from this to-do list, which is of type KT list to-do item, we want to find the particular to-do item on the index, which is represented inside of the list by this TodoTile widget. So we're going to use this index field. So TodoList at index dot name, which is a validated value object to-do name, and its value, which is again an either type, and now we again want to fault. Cool. Now, in the case of a right value, which we can actually ignore, we're going to return null, so that if everything is correct, no error message is going to be displayed next to the text form field. However, if there is a failure f coming from the to-do name, we want to show appropriate error messages. So we want to map over the value failure, so maybe map, and we want to handle all of the possible cases which can occur for a to-do name. Now, the simplest way to find out about the possible error messages which we can use, or the possible value failures which can occur, is to take a look at the code. So what can happen is that it cannot be empty, it needs to be single line, and it also needs to have some sort of a maximum length. So this means that these are the three errors which we need to handle, right? So let's come back to the TodoList widget, and inside of maybe map, we are going to handle empty, right? We can actually ignore the parameters here. So it's going to say cannot be empty. Then we need to handle exceeding length, which is going to just tell the user too long. And lastly, multi-line, which is gonna tell the user that has to be in a single line. And lastly, because we are using a maybe map function, we also need to provide the or else, which is just going to return null. This or else will never happen, but we need to handle it because we are using maybe map. But the only failures which can occur in this case are empty, exceeding length, and multi-line. Cool, so now if we add an to-do here, which is gonna be empty, and we try to save the note, we are going to get an error message saying cannot be empty. Now, if we type in just too many characters, as you can see, it's already pre-validated, or it's being validated as we go. So it's gonna say too long. As you can see, we can type in many characters like this, but once we close the keyboard, the characters are gonna be shortened to the maximum allowed value, which is in this case 30. And why does this happen? Well, Flutter does it for us because we have specified the max length. So it enforces the max length, but it seems that it does that only after you close the keyboard, like this. All right, but with this, we should be actually able to save the note, shouldn't we? Or maybe not. It's kind of weird, the thing which Flutter does. So after we remove one more character, we're gonna be good to go. But anyway, regardless of what Flutter does, some craziness with the characters and closing the keyboard. Previously, I think that it worked even without closing the keyboard, I guess. I remember it so. But anyway, we are still protected because we are not gonna allow the user to continue with saving the note unless there are at most 30 characters. We could argue that now the to-do list is finally functional, not yet fully functional, because we cannot reorder it, and also not yet fully functional because we cannot delete individual to-dos. But before trying to delete individual to-dos in this part, let's first focus on styling the whole to-do tile even more. So we will want to wrap the whole list tile inside of a container, and this container will have a decoration, how else, which will be a box decoration, and this box decoration will have a border dot all sides, and its color will be colors gray. All right, so now it looks like this, which looks kind of horrible. If for anything else, it's because all of the to-dos are really just stuck onto each other. So let's also just add a padding here. So we're gonna say padding, which is gonna be const edge insets symmetric, and horizontal padding should be 8 logical pixels, and vertical will be a bit smaller. Only 2 pixels will be enough. Okay. Actually not okay, because it looks horrible still. This should not be padding, but margin, right? Now it looks proper. So margin is from the outside. With padding, we have padded from the inside. So in this case, you want to use margin. Don't do the same mistake as I did. Lastly, this border should be rounded with rounded corners. So let's say border radius will be border radius dot, let's say circular. And my favorite value is always 8 logical pixels. So now it looks like this, which is pretty good, right? So now we can focus on the last thing which we are going to do in this part, which is the ability to delete individual to-dos. For it, we are going to use a widget coming from the Flutter slidable package. So let's wrap this container inside a widget called slidable. Let's import Flutter slidable, and using Flutter slidable is actually very, very simple. It has a few required parameters. So the parameter action pane is required. So let's provide it. Action pane. We're going to use an action pane coming from the package itself. It's called slidable drawer action pane. So what this is going to do is that we will have a drawer effect. You have multiple effects of how the animation will happen, but what we want to have is a fairly simple animation of just dragging the delete button from the right and not having any fancy transform things in there, really just a simple animation like this, which is called a drawer action pane. Now we need to actually provide the actions which can be performed by the user when the slidable is slid out. So the actions which are on the right side of a list tile or anything else are called secondary actions. So we're going to specify them, and they're going to be an icon slide action, and it needs to have a caption, let's say delete. And it obviously needs to have more things specified. For example, icon needs to be specified. So icon delete. Okay, and now we can see that it actually is shown, but it looks kind of silly because we want it to be with colors red. Now it looks like this, and it has automatically, the package has automatically detected that the red color will work the best with a white icon, which is quite nice that it changed the color of the icon automatically. And before doing anything inside of the onTap callback, where we want to delete the actual to-do, Let's style this a bit, because I think that we could make this button a bit more narrow. So we can do that by specifying an action extend ratio of 0.15. And as you can see, it has gotten narrower. So now inside of this on tab, we again want to first update the primitives and then pass those updated primitives, with one of them being deleted, to the node form block. So let's first reassign in a truly immutable manner the form to-dos. We are going to say context form to-dos dot minus element, and the element which we want to subtract or remove from our immutable KT list of to-do item primitives is the to-do. So again, what we are doing here is something like removing an item from a mutable list, but because this list is immutable, we can only minus an element, which is going to return a new instance of our list, KT list, which is immutable, and then we need to reassign our form to-dos, which is a value notifier. So the usual stuff. This is the same thing basically which we are doing inside of all of the unchanged callbacks, as you can see here, or even here inside of the text form field. We are always reassigning the form to-dos which are held inside of our value notifier, which we have created a few parts back. And then again, let's call context node form block and to-dos changed, and pass in the fresh context.form to-dos. All right, so with this done, we can now, let's just close it off. So you can see there is this third horribly named to-do, and we can now delete it from here, delete, save, and as you can see, this horribly named to-do has been removed. So let's add another one. Complete the second one, hey. Right, so the first and second one are completed. And let's try to delete the second one called hey, save it. And as you could see, probably, we had an issue because when we have a third to do here, let's say hello, right, like this, and now we delete the second one, this FASFSAD, right? Now still, we sort of remain with this FSASAD something inside of there, instead of hello being displayed, even though we have just deleted this horribly named one. So what's happening? Why is this horribly named one still remaining in here? But once we save the node, we see hello instead of that horrible name. So what's up with all of this? Well, of course, the way to prevent this sort of switching up of the texts inside of a list view from happening is to use keys, because keys can identify a widget inside of a widget tree uniquely. Now, what I'm about to do right now may look a bit silly, because I'm going to get a form to do, or a to do item primitive, just like we are doing here inside of this build method. I'm going to do the same thing, but here inside of the item builder of the list view, because what I want to do here is to say that the key of the whole to do tile will be a value key, which we are going to get from context.form to do's, and at the index, and then the ID of the to-do item primitive, like this. So we are apparently accessing the form to-dos list and getting the individual to-do item primitive twice. First here, and then inside of the TodoTile build method. This is going to change in the next episode because we are going to make this list reorderable. So we are not just going to use a classic list view, but instead a package which offers us an implicitly animated reorderable list. So the logic will change a bit, the code will change a bit, so it will not be this silly. But for now, this is what we have here. And with this done, we can now add a third to do here. And after I delete the hello, you will see that now the third will be properly displayed as the second to do, just like it should be. All right. So with this all done, with fixing the widgets mismatch with a value key, we have just successfully done what we have set out to do in this part. So if you are serious about becoming a great Flutter developer who can build real apps for clients or at a job, go to flutter.education, link is also in the video description, to get the top curated Flutter news and resources aimed at improving your app development career. Over there, you can also subscribe to my mailing list to get the best Flutter resources delivered weekly right into your inbox. And if you don't want to miss more tutorials like this, whether from this domain-driven design tutorial series where we are slowly but surely nearing the end, or also other Flutter tutorials, be sure to subscribe to this channel and also join Notification Squad by hitting the bell button to make sure you grow your Flutter skills, because here on ResoCoder, I am determined to provide you with the best tutorials and resources so that you will become an in-demand Flutter developer. If this video helped you, give it a like and also share it with other people who are surely going to benefit from this too. Leave a comment if you have anything to say, and see you in the next video.